Texas filmmaker Richard Linklater made his first feature-length film at age 25 or so, which was 89 minutes long, shot on Super 8, and was titled It's Impossible to Learn to Plow by Reading Books. He nicknamed it Plow. Rick did everything on that film. Wrote, directed, camera operator, sound editor. He was the star, too. He went $3,000 in debt to make it. Despite it being an amateur production, the local art scene audiences of Austin, Texas, where Linklater was residing, received it well. There was a buzz around town about the film and its young creator. People were talking. Linklater was about 27 when he began producing his second feature-length film titled Slacker. Its format was likely inspired by a couple of different French directors who each made films in which the story was told through a series of vignettes of characters who were unrelated to one another. For instance, one such film, L'Argent, was told through a 50-franc note being passed from one character to the next, with each scene depicting what the character experienced while in possession of the note. Slacker had a baton passing, if you will, from character to character, scene to scene. You can still find Slacker if you wish to check it out. Rick borrowed money from family and friends in order to make Slacker. He also went a whopping $23,000 in credit card debt, too. This was back in about 1989. Adjusted for inflation, that figure could be as high as $60,000 today. A major community effort was made to make Slacker. There were probably over 100 people in the cast. They filmed in the abandoned buildings of Austin. No one was paid initially for their work. Slacker was released in 1990, receiving a cult following. Its format was something new and different to audiences. Slacker captured the bohemian artsy vibe of Austin, Texas at that time. Some would say that it spoke for Generation X. Time magazine had recently released an issue describing Generation X. Slacker was considered a piece of film that was made by and for Gen Xers. Local film critics praised it. It played often in the art house theaters in Austin. A major buzz spread about the film to the point where even the governor of Texas showed up to one of the screenings. Orion Pictures bought the film for $100,000. It was then put in small college markets and theaters, grossing over $2.5 million in today's money. With the $100,000, Linklater was able to pay back relatives and friends who had invested in the film, as well as paying all of the actors something. He was only able to net $6,000 for himself, thus leaving him still in heavy credit card debt. Given its success, Slacker earned a spot at the Sundance Film Festival, where it was viewed by producer Jim Jacks, a vice president of productions and acquisitions at Universal Pictures. Jacks didn't entirely understand Slacker, but the film impressed him nonetheless. Jacks and the production president of Universal, named Sean Daniel, had started their own production company called Alphaville Films, which had an exclusive deal with Universal. Basically, these two big-shot producers working for the major studio Universal had their own little side company through which they could produce their own movies through their employer, Universal Pictures. They were searching for a promising young director who would make an appealing film, or in other words, would make a profitable film. Later, they flew Linklater first class from Austin to Los Angeles, putting him up at the famous Chateau Marmont Hotel. The goal of the trip was for Rick to pitch his next project to Jim Jacks and Sean Daniel. Sean Daniel had previously been an executive at Universal for youth films during such projects as Animal House, 16 Candles, Fast Times at Ridgemont High, and Breakfast Club. Youth culture films were something he genuinely enjoyed and had much success with in his career. It just so happened that this young director, Richard Linklater, had his own idea for a youth culture film. Rick pitched Dazed and Confused as the American Graffiti of the 70s. Sean Daniel, the one who had worked on all those classic teen films mentioned earlier, was sold. Jim Jacks was excited too. They in turn went to Tom Pollock, who was the head of Universal, and convinced him to greenlight the film. Back when Pollock was a young entertainment lawyer, he worked on American Graffiti when it was being made. He had fond memories of that production and gave the go-ahead for Dazed and Confused. Rick received $25,000 to write the script because remember, the movie was just a rough idea when he pitched it. Linklater paid off $24,000 in credit card debt in one afternoon with the proceeds. His credit was a mess at that point. There is a board of executives that will meet to review the projects that are in development by the studio. A further look is taken as to the viability of those projects. Some executives began to show disinterest in Dazed, putting the film at risk of not being made. However, Sean Daniel had a clause in his contract that gave him the ability to be guaranteed the green light for a film as long as the budget was $6 million or less. This was a token he could only cash in once. The rest of the execs reluctantly agreed to let Dazed be made. This reluctance would affect the film's marketing budget and release later on.